The first session is a featured session for NASTF titled OEM Validation of Collision Repair Workmanship. And it's a panel discussion, and the moderator of this panel is Teresa Bolton, who is the ASE Director of Collision Repair Test Development. So Teresa, if you'll come up here, I'll turn this over to you, and she will introduce the panel and entertain and inform you for the next 60 minutes.
Thank you.
Adjust the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Bolton. I'm the Director of Collision Repair Test Development for ASE, and I would like to thank everyone for attending NASTF's general meeting and the panel discussion on OEM validation of collision repair workmanship. Does this?
Use the arrow.
Okay. Okay, before we get started, I'd like to talk about a few points that the panelists and I talked about on our conference calls prior to this event. And this is what I've taken away from it and what I know and see currently available in our industry. And what we had to determine was what validation, verification, certification, recognition, and compliance meant in our industry, and how it was being used. Validation is a standard or a procedure that addresses a need. For instance, you have a damaged vehicle in your shop and it needs to be repaired. First and foremost, does a repair procedure exist? And number two, is it current and is it accurate? Verification is confirming that a standard or a procedure was followed. And this is limited in our industry because you can't inspect every aspect of a repair. Certification is a recognition that either a person or something, either the shop or equipment that they use, have met certain qualifications through training and testing or standards. And recognition and compliance is something that either a person or something, meaning the shop or the equipment, have met certain qualifications and testing to be a part of a program. And what I see within the programs that are currently available in our industry, there is some sort of verification and validation procedure or process which qualifies the facility certification. These procedures can either be developed by vehicle manufacturers that have programs or by third-party programs that have they service some collision facilities and are in the position to make technical repair recommendations. It's worth noting that some vehicle manufacturers use a third-party validation to complement their certification program. And today, this is going to be just a general overview of what the current processes and procedures are and what's available, who's driving it, what it may or may not involve as far as training and equipment, what are the benefits and the considerations, and what are the potential costs for the repairer and the vehicle manufacturer. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Farza Mashfar, CEO of Verifax Automotive. Come on up. John Bozine, Director OEM Segment Development for iCar. Aaron Clark, VP of National Certification and Network Development for Assured Performance. Gary Ledoux, Assistant Manager, National Manager for American Honda Motor Company, Incorporated. And Gary Wano, Executive VP of GW Sons Auto Body. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I'll start off with you, Mr. Wano. What types of programs do you have in your shop currently?
We are certified for Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar Land Rover, we have certification for Volvo, Tesla, and we are trained to repair BMW products.
Mr. Ladeau, how do the programs work within Honda?
Tomorrow, funny you should ask, tomorrow we'll be launching our new Pro First certified program. We've had a Pro First recognized program for about the last 3.5 years, and we're going the next step up with a certified program starting tomorrow.
Okay, Aaron, would you like to talk a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Certification entity, nonprofit consumer advocacy group. We certify shops for having the proper tools, equipment, and training, essentially meeting OEM standards.
Okay, and John, how do you play into these programs?
Most of the certification programs that the OEs have involve ICAR training. They're looking for the shops to have the skills, knowledge, and information to do proper repairs, complete safe and proper repairs. So we work closely with a lot of the OEs. We work closely with Verifax, and we work closely with Assured Performance Network, as well as being part of Honda's Pro First program.
Okay, thank you. And Farzam?
Farzam Abshar with Verifax, and what we do is we verify quality of repair from finished perspective. So we go in after in a facility, and when the job is finished or during the job that is being worked out, we look at and measure all the proper outcome and make sure that they're following the manufacturer guidelines and the right training they did through the ICAR, and they're providing all of that knowledge into the work they're doing. So we verify the output, the result of all the work that they've done, so make sure the consumer gets what they're deserve, which is safe and proper repair.
Thank you. Mr. Ladeau, why are vehicle manufacturers requiring such programs?
Well, we realize that Honda and Acura products, and all car lines actually, but speaking for Honda and Acura, we realize that our cars are getting more higher technology, more sophisticated, using a lot of high-strength, a lot of electronics in it. We want to make sure that the car is fixed properly, that the consumer gets a safe and complete repair, and so that they'll be safe, God forbid, for any collisions.
Okay. I guess all of you could answer this. From the user end, you could answer this too. How are standards developed when a repair procedure is not readily available for all vehicles?
I'll take that.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, there's currently we don't have really standard in our industry. What we have is the great work that ICAR has done, and some work that manufacturers have done, and then some best practices that are out there. So we mishmash all of that together, and then technicians do the best they can based on those things. So there's no particular standard that our industry follows. So in a short answer is, first and foremost, what we see is what manufacturers have said. This is the way we want our car to repair, so we follow that. And many times there's it's like a Swiss cheese, a lot of holes in there. So not everything is spelled out. So then we follow to what ICAR has done, and then if that doesn't complete the whole thing, then they follow what we think is the best thing to do based on what we have today.
I would say from a repair standpoint, it'd be the deal. You basically want to go into the OEM site, do the due diligence to research. And if there is a void, and that's been a great thing of where ICAR has picked up this last year, is ICAR has actually also been that one powerful catalyst, it's allowed an opportunity in most instances to have that void filled. So they're going to come up with some type of procedure that has been accepted through the industry and apparently accepted by the manufacturer, or the manufacturer would have some type of dialogue back, I'd imagine. So, yeah, I would say that that'd be the process that be followed from a repair standpoint.
Okay.
I think I'll add that there's different standards that exist between a repair standard, information standards, and so on. And I think from a standard conceptual approach or how you develop standards, it's through those stakeholders or those different segments working together to identify, the needs, whether or not the equipment or the training actually addresses those needs, and if there's any gaps that exist there, those stakeholders are working together to develop and agree upon the solution.
And I'll comment as well, Teresa. The industry a number of years ago was trying to establish standards, and the best that the industry could come up with is that the OEs, what their recommendations are, their repair procedures, that those would be the standards. What we've been trying to do is fill in any gaps there.
Okay. Now, is there any process that exists with the vehicle manufacturers to approve third-party repair procedures? Is there anything like that out there?
Speaking for Honda, all of our standards come from Japan. So when a new car comes out, usually the collision repair manual comes out just virtually days before the car is introduced, and whatever is in there comes straight from Japan. So.
Okay. Okay. Who validates or complies with the validator or the complier? Who is the one that's in charge of validating a shop or validating equipment within the programs that are available today?
There are, within each manufacturer that we deal with, there are different levels and different individuals that fall into place. So the relationship from the repair standpoint, the relationship typically begins between yourself and the dealer principal of that manufacturer vehicle. Once that relationship is built, then there's an opportunity of being able to reach out to the OEM and begin that process. And then in many instances, some of which I guess do have some in-house, but most of which have a third-party verifier that comes out to be sure that, number one, not only do you have the equipment, but the equipment is not piled in a corner with a bunch of stuff on top of it, but the equipment is being utilized. Asking pertinent questions of the technical staff as to the operational piece. They may not literally sit and watch the piece of equipment being used, but pose a couple of questions. Hey, if this happens, what do you usually do? If this is the situation, how do you handle that? So the questions are posed in a fashion that helps that validator to determine whether or not the individual knows that piece of equipment. And then also, just checking to be sure that transcripts are up to date on those that are working on the automobiles. So.
For ourselves, for Honda, Japan has told us what kind of equipment is needed, what kind of tools are needed, and so forth. We simply have that on a list for our shops, and we let them know this is the type of tools and equipment that are needed. And then in practice, what we do is we have a third party. We have Exalta Coatings, who is our third party, and they're going to actually go to the shop and go to the actual site and see the equipment and make sure that it's, like Gary said, in a working condition, not piled in a corner somewhere.
In our case, we'll do a physical on-site inspection of facilities, infrastructure, the equipment, those requirements for our program. And it's just done by a physical on-site inspection to validate that equipment is there in a good working order, that the training has been achieved by the shops.
ICAR's role in the certification or validation process is really not in the shop at all, but working with the third party, especially somebody like Assured Performance with Honda's Pro First program. Does the shop have the required training in place? Are the technicians platinum? Is the shop gold class? That's our role in being part of this recognition or certification process.
Okay.
For us at Verifax, we have a program called VQ and VQ Meadowlands, which measures the input and output of the repair. The input is what's required by manufacturer based on training, equipment, processes, procedures, and parts, material, all the key elements. And then output would be really finding out, are they doing what they said they're going to do? So we measure the input, and we also measure the output. And then, so if there is something missing in the output, we can easily point back to the input saying, you know what, you're having a wrong welder, and this manufacturer requires this particular welder to be able to have that outcome to be the right outcome. So measuring the both input and output for us allowing the dots and making sure the consumer get what they're really out there supposed to get, which is safe and proper repair. And if there's something missing, like the proper training, we can send them back to the right organization, ICAR, or if there's particular equipment that they need a training on, we send them back to what the equipment that may be, saying, hey, you're missing the training on this equipment. So we kind of get to be able to see the whole perspective and see what's missing and act accordingly.
Okay, thank you. What are the benefits or considerations of these programs for the vehicle manufacturer, for the shop, and for the technician?
I'll address it from a technical standpoint for sure, in the shop as well. But you know, we found over the years that a body and refinishing tech, they make it to that plateau, or did make it to that plateau relatively quickly. Went through some courses, possibly did some ICAR training, did whatever, and they made it to what had perceived to be, as far as they're going to make, the only thing they could do is hone their abilities, increase their effectiveness, and maybe make a little more money based on familiarization with the product. With the inception of these certified programs, or the accessibility of these programs, there's another level that is attainable then to each one of those technicians. It's no longer that you're going to be a body tech and that's it. Body tech who is specifically trained in this particular make or manufacturing vehicle, and that seems to intrigue our staff. Having the ability, it's not just plaque on the wall, but it's that fact, and then to look at and not taking away from any specific training piece, but I sit hand in hand with in most of those training segments with my technical staff members. So I'll have the practical application as far as the repairability aspects on a vehicle. Now I may not be the one that you want to repair your car by any means, but I have the practical application piece. And I do that so that I can also just, number one, to know what I know, and then number two is to get some kind of idea of what they're actually going through from that training, the regimen training. There's some of these programs that are very, very tedious. There's some aluminum welding pieces that go on to a couple of the OEMs that if you have an opportunity to go with a technician or get an opportunity to go in one of those courses, take that opportunity. You'll see what the individual, that man or woman, that technician is facing when they go and do some welding training. It is grueling. It is something that literally it's not for the faint of heart. I'll put it that way. So it's a wonderful opportunity for these guys to advance. Where you thought advancement is all the way to the end. Now there's this levels of advancement that goes into place. From a repair standpoint, it helps us to also attract some of the best technicians. You know, I mean, for the fact that we are known within our market areas, the only ones who have stepped up investment in our facility as well as our people. That says something in our industry, in our part of the market. So we have individuals that are, I'm not going to say staying in line, don't get me wrong, but but it wouldn't take much for us to replace or add to based on our culture of learning and training and advancement that we have at GW and Sons. So.
Going back to the question was benefits. Benefits, correct? So for the Pro First program, we've got a number of benefits for the shop, some collateral materials, plaque, and so forth. We put their name up on the Honda shop locator site at collision.honda.com. Various other collateral materials that we provide for them, but really, I mean, the program is more about making sure that the car gets fixed properly, using the right tools, the right equipment, the right procedures, and so forth. Once we get this thing rolling, we're going to be looking for other ways to promote the shop to our Honda and Acura owners. We've got ways to avenues already that we can go there, but we want to let our Honda and Acura know that this is the place where they want to have their car repaired.
Both these gentlemen, I think that you know, there's obviously implied benefits, like Gary said, from a being a business that's in the right place, doing the right thing for the right reason. But you know, so recognition is certainly important as a business. You know, to be recognized for having met or achieved some kind of a standard. I think that, you know, to me, it's a case where the vehicle technology is changing so fast that these things are going to consistently and constantly change as well. So to look at somebody that's met a particular standard today, or what is certified today, doesn't necessarily mean that it's certified tomorrow. And it's probably important to note that we certify a repair facility, whereas this is a kind of a validation of collision repair workmanship, which would be more vehicle specific. And I think that what you'll see over time is more and more of the tools, equipment, and training needs are going to be platform or vehicle specific. So from a universal application, what goes for one isn't necessarily going to go for all. From a validation point of view, though, what exactly are we validating? And you know, I know that in our discussions from the panel point of view, you know, it's a case that, to me, a lot of times you can't really validate that something has been performed correctly with the correct equipment until it's been put through some kind of a destructive test or laboratory analysis to be able to determine if the mating flanges were prepared properly, if the right welder was used, if the right electrode was used in that welder. You can't just visually look at that and determine that those things have been met. So it's very important for the collision repair facility to have any of the required equipment and have all of the required equipment that may apply to whatever particular vehicle that we're discussing.
Teresa, I started calling on the OEM, calling on the collision and parts people. 11 years ago, the OEM programs, if they had something addressing collision at all, it was pretty much a marketing program, and it was geared towards selling parts. In the 11 years since I started doing that, the OEs have absolutely changed their programs, and they're very focused on the consumer, the vehicle owner. They're very concerned with their brand. That if there is a collision in one of their vehicles, they want the owner to have the best collision repair process possible. They want the owner to be totally satisfied with how the OE played a role in that. They want to make sure that it's a complete, safe, and quality repair. It's really been a huge change at the OE level.
Thank you. And as I, it's thanks for having me sit here at the end, so I can learn from the wisdom here that has been brought all the way down to me. But I really appreciate what Gary said, which is about really what he was saying about the honor, the pride of not just being certified at the lower level, but really going that extra mile and people feeling proud about what they're doing. I think our industry is really proud about what they're doing, and having certification on the wall and going to this very special training makes you feel like, you know what, I'm like a doctor. Actually, I am a doctor. So this is a great thing to do that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Gary. And then from a brand protection and a brand piece of what manufacturers looking for is like, they want to make sure the years and experience and research that has gone to have one vehicle to be developed, that's, if it gets in an accident, the same 5-star rating still applies after the repair of the accident. So brand is really important for manufacturers dealing with the great shops like Gary and having that proud and moment with the technician stuff. And then coming to a certification, as Aaron's talking about, which is really making sure the shops are meeting those things. I want to just add something to that. As Aaron said, it is important to, you're right, after the car is painted, it's done, you can't see how the weld was done. You're absolutely right. So that's why what we do is we come in unannounced. Go look at the repair. Go look at the welds. Go to the paint department before the car has been painted. And look and count, make sure, was there 222 welds as it was set on the paper? Was the key welds, one was supposed to be, 211 was MIG and 3 MIG brakes. I mean, all those key things, was it done or not before it was painted? And if you keep checking that, and the technicians understand, you know what, actually somebody cares enough to really see those things. So you know what, then they start having really look at those manufacturers' paperwork, saying when it says, you know what, in this setup, you require to have everything's all finished and done with your headlamp to make sure you measure it. I mean, today, headlamp on some of the Mercedes vehicles are required safety item. If you're not setting up the headlamp, you're bound to give a wrong detailed message to the CPU of the vehicle to get into an accident. I mean, old days, shops did not think about that. Today, technicians must take that as really what is needed to be done in fixing cars right. So, back to you.
What is the ROI on these programs that you participate in as far as your shop goes?
Wow.
Yeah.
That'll depend on the market a lot. I do participate in one of the certifications. I'll leave it at that. And my market is not yet caught up from a fleet size at this point. A lot of money invested in the program, and I'm just waiting now for the fleet size to catch it. So it'd be great, but in all actuality, you've got to measure it more than one way, because you're going to measure dollars and cents. But again, just kind of going back to the cultural aspect, as long as things are genuine, as long as things are going, and you continue to see that particular manufacturer's vehicles come through the store, your ROI might not be met in that 18, 24, 30-month period, whatever you may have earmarked for it. Eventually, you keep doing the right things for the right reasons, it's going to come realistically. Now, granted, I'll tell you, some of these programs are very, very expensive, and it's not real cost effective if you're going to look at just one of them. Here's the other piece of it. You might look at multiples where you do have some crossover when it comes down to some of the equipment, because there is some crossover. Not in all instances. I've got as many welders in my stores I think Dave has at Reliable. I mean, I just feel like that way. That and riveting tools. That's just the nature of the game. That's what you're going to have. You're going to be there. You're going to be ready to invest in that piece of it and understand some of the complexities that go in behind each one of those decisions that are being made on those particular pieces of equipment. But there's ROI to be gained. And again, the cultural piece is it's satisfying in itself. So.
There are programs that we've done in the past at Honda where I've sweated and toiled for weeks over an Excel spreadsheet to make the numbers come out right and so forth, and the ROI is at the bottom. This was not one of them. In this particular case, yes, we're going to promote the program to our Honda and Acura owners, and yes, we're going to promote the program to body shops, but this is not about into the shop in particular. This is about getting the job done right, making sure the car is fixed right, with the right tools and the right procedures for the right reasons. So that's our take on it.
ROI to me is difficult to calculate. I think as Gary alluded to, it's certainly going to be dictated by how you're going to get your measuring stick out to measure it. And to Gary's point, is this really something that you're going? Is it just a price admission to where you have to be certified? And pose the argument of what happens when you're not certified. But I think that culturally, I think there is a big difference from a value within that organization that, they've met certain standards, they continue to meet standards that continue to evolve. So culturally, there is a huge value. But I also feel like this industry is stricken with everybody by one measuring stick, and it's kind of everybody being held to the lowest common denominator. So I know a good word that Gary pulled out of his hat years ago in Australia was, what is your purple cow, and what makes you different? And I think that I know how difficult it is to measure shops to the standards that we currently have, and the fact that even the equipment isn't even available for a lot of these shops to have and possess to even meet such standard. So as these things change, there's inherent value from a business perspective, because you have separated yourself above and beyond the majority of the marketplace, and kind of from a certification point of view, it's the recognition or the medal that you get for running the race. So to me, I think that overall the value is the culture in the business and the value of the business because of that. It's a big picture thing.
Well, rather than call it a purple cow, I'll call it a gold cow. A gold class absolutely can differentiate a shop. And in terms of ROI, Jeff Peavy, our director for the collision segment, has done a lot of research that shows that there are double-digit gains in ROI, there are double-digit gains in profitability, there is much greater retention of employees in a gold class shop because they're getting trained, they're happy to work there. And there is also just a total comprehension in that shop that they are doing the right kind of work, and the employees are proud to be there and proud to be part of the industry. So the ROI is huge in the certified shops, and for all the reasons that both Gary's and Aaron have stated so far. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to chime in just before you do, Farzam.
Please.
Because I know that the company I work for, ASE, they've done the same research, and they found that certified technicians do it right the first time. They love their job. They are productive. It's all positive, just as iCar has.
That's great. ROI is a pretty, it's a boardroom conversation. It's a conversation when you sit down and present your case, someone's going to say, so show me the money. And it's kind of hard, as Aaron said, it's not easy to say, here's the price of pride. Here's the price of sleeping good at night knowing I did the right thing. I mean, you can't really put price onto those things. It's not an easy thing to do that. So, what I would say is just that. Most of my people that I work with, I have the pleasure and honor of working with the owners of shop owners. They say, why do you do this? You're being recognized, but nobody requires that, because we don't believe you should be required. The people should be doing it because you want to do the right thing. And they said, I've been in the program for 8-9 years. What really I get for it, I can sleep better at night knowing someone other than myself looking at the job. And I'm actually being changed and challenged and with myself and my technicians, and I'm being compared to some of the best shops in the country. That's my ROI.
Yeah, Teresa, I got one more thing to add to that, if I may. At Honda, we've got a website, a consumer website called Honda.com. And on the website, in typical fashion, there's a little link on there that says Contact Us. Well, when you click on that, I'm at the other end of that Contact Us. And I get not a lot of emails, but I get emails through there occasionally. And probably once or twice a month, I get an email from a consumer that's looked at that site. That's also where our current recognized shops are listed. And so they'll send me an email and they'll say, gee, you know, in the past I've gone to X body shop and I looked on the link and I noticed XYZ body shop is not on there. They're not recognized. Why? And you can kind of see the question mark coming out of their head as you're reading the email, you know, and that kind of really puts a question in their mind as to why their favorite shop was not recognized by Honda. So there's another way to figure ROI.
Right, exactly. Okay, how do vehicle manufacturers define what the training requirements are and how they can be met? Is third-party training acceptable? Is there any training overlap?
I'll speak from the standpoint from the repairer's viewpoint. In many instances, no, the only training overlap would be where ICAR may be part of that development piece. Most of the rest of it is done via, from the manufacturers we work with, is done via their own training facilities. So very, very little, if none, other than the ICAR piece is the overlap from manufacturers.
At Honda, for the new program, we've chosen to use ICAR as our training resource, and they've been around since 1979, quite some time. Everybody knows ICAR, so we've chosen them as the training resource. And we also produce some of our own training in-house, which is also distributed through ICAR. So that's how we work that. But we also recognize that there are some shops that are very good shops with Mercedes or BMW or whoever, and they're really good shops. They're not an ICAR Gold shop, but they're still a good shop. So to kind of address those guys, we take another turn at this, and we also say that the shop can be a Verifax VQ or VQ Medallion shop. So either ICAR Gold class or a Verifax VQ or VQ Medallion for our Pro First program. That's how we address it.
In my opinion, I think there's a bit of a between manufacturers with how training is developed. You know, some do it internally, deliver that through their own method. You know, that in most cases it's more of a platform-specific approach, as I talked about earlier. ICAR's traditionally done more of a universal training model. They have done some platform-specific training. I think with the F-150, the Honda classes, we're going to see more and more of this going forward. I'm sure John will want to talk about that, so I won't steal his thunder. You know, because I think that's where the direction is going to go in the industry, whereas, again, like I said earlier, what goes for one can't go for all. You know, it may be a case where, you know, we may soon see a class on how to actually read and interpret repair procedures, because especially when you go to a more universal approach, what's really going to be important at that point is what is actually in the repair method itself, which is going to be prescribed by the car manufacturer, which I think that the car manufacturers will continue to probably focus on building those procedures and then leave it up to a training organization like ICAR to develop the curriculum and deliver the training and do what they're good at. You know, even if a manufacturer does training, you know, it's probably a case where they may not have that model that exists in the marketplace to be able to deliver that training if they don't do it themselves. So until somebody's able to be able to fill that need, you know, those car manufacturers will continue to deliver it themselves, or if an organization like ICAR can get to a point where it can deliver more platform-specific training to address these needs that are going to be specific to each make and model that are out there, that's where I kind of see it. As far as the overlap, anybody that's attended ICAR, and again, ICAR's probably got the awareness of that, there absolutely is some overlap in the training that's out there that ICAR delivers and requires from the PDP platform. But to Gary's point, I think that manufacturer delivered training is probably going to see a lot less overlap because it's going to be focusing on that specific model. But I think that you also see the introduction of a lot more equipment-specific training in the future because there's absolutely a need out there. There's differences from one piece of equipment to another, so it may have to be delivered through the equipment manufacturer, not necessarily by the car manufacturer. So.
And Aaron is absolutely right that ICAR is doing much more vehicle-specific training. We're developing courses on an ongoing basis for a number of the OEs. ICAR did start in 1979, and it was formed by the industry. And it was all about making sure that the technicians have the skills and the knowledge to do a complete quality and safe repair. Towards that end, what we have offered the OEMs is the ability where they do not have to spend the money to do their own training centers, have their own training instructors. They can go to a centralized, nonprofit body like ICAR to do that for them. Now, having said that, the OEs very much believe, or a number of them believe, that their training is proprietary, that it is integral to their protecting their brand and making sure that they get a good repair. In many cases, those OEs will specify that the shop have a number of ICAR classes before they even get the more intensive specific training that they each provide. So we're trying to, as a nonprofit, be a resource to the industry to make sure that everyone can expect and receive a quality repair in a timely fashion.
With Verifax VQ, and especially with VQ Medallion, we have pretty close to 670 line item of inspection point and having to comply with those things. And so what we believe is we really look for the ecosystem of fixing cars right. If we see someone is welding very right, they're a high quality welder, and by looking at them, because the proof is in the, how does that go?
Proof is in the pudding.
Huh? Say again?
Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, thank you very much. English in my third language, I do miss things like that. So proof is in the pudding. So by checking that, we're able to see, the guy's doing it. If we're able to qualify that shop as a VQ Medallion, then we don't believe they should go and through another expense to get another quote by simply verifying that. Because at the end of the day, you want people who do have a certificate, but more importantly, you want somebody who knows how to do the job. So if they're doing the job right, and I have it right in front of me and it's been documented, I don't believe we should send them to another set of training just because we can. It's this industry, as it is, there's a great deal of putting many extra things on the shops, and so if we have an opportunity to performance, we do check that out with the right performance. You really don't need that if the performance meet the manufacturer's requirement at that moment.
No, kind of same situation. Is, if we take a look at some of the manufacturers that do a lot of crash testing, any of the ones that we currently work with crash test countless automobiles. automobiles, and they try to do so in a fashion that does fit real world type situations. But if you really considered, if you had, many of you being repairers itself, 2 or 3 degrees off of, you could get same car, same mile per hour, 2 or 3 degrees off of the direction that the last one was hit, there's a complete different set of damage or collateral damage, I guess, that takes place during that period of time. And what we have found is that the manufacturers that we have done some business with and do business with currently, that they'll take that data, and then after they've ran this several different ways, we may find that today we pull data out of the website to repair a facility or repair a car in a certain. Tomorrow we pull that same data up on a same automobile, or pull data up on the same automobile, and that data be a little bit different. And it's not that the data before was wrong, it's just that they have found that if they apply additional rivets or put bonding in some area or completely and totally annihilated welding from the repair process, whatever it might be, they would, by changing that particular aspect, if that car is hit at this particular point at that mile per hour, it saves the inertia from going into the cabin of the automobile. So to say that anybody who trains today is going to know that car from now on is also a foul. It's a fallacy. There's no way that today I could learn on the repairability aspects of a S-Class Mercedes-Benz and say I don't need to go back in 6 months for a refresher, because there is difference in the way that the manufacturer comes up with that crash data just based on the crash testing they do.
And I think that Gary just hit on something that I wanted to make sure that, and I constantly run into it because of what we do, but for somebody to think that, I've went through all the hundreds of hours of training to repair aluminum, and they did it through Jaguar, through Mercedes, and through Porsche, or through Tesla. And because of that, and because I have this equipment set up in this way, I can now fix the Ford F-150. It's ludicrous because it's a completely different material. It has a completely different set of repair procedures. And from an overlap point of view, we have to understand that, and again, going forward, this is going to be more and more important, that each vehicle is different. So, and just don't assume that you have the knowledge set, because that in and of itself is dangerous. It's just like the technician that doesn't think he needs training because he's been fixing cars for 20 years. To me, that nothing screams the need of training more than that, just because he said that. So,
absolutely.
Okay, with these programs, do they require specific equipment? And is there any overlap and redundancy in the equipment requirements?
Well, as I said, that's where part of that ORI comes into place. And if you're able to find a couple of programs that you can bank slightly on that ability of being able to cross over from an equipment standpoint, and that's a good thing. But realistically, I think to the guy's points earlier, there are specific reasoning behind each piece of equipment that they do come into place with them. I recently upgraded for the Mercedes-Benz program another welder, multiple tens of thousands of dollars for a welder. This particular welder, though, with 208 amps coming through to the car, 208 volts coming to the welder, it enables that welder to be able to determine the metal that's working on, determine the thickness, determine every aspect of it, reset itself, recalibrate itself to be able to do the weld without. I mean, it's make it simple, stupid kind of thing. However, I found when we brought the welder in, I found that even though I've got a huge service to my building, that because of the infrastructure electrical company, we had a couple other businesses come into place, and during the very, very hot summer months, I was getting 191 volts coming to my building instead of 208 volts, and that welder would not operate in that low temperature. It literally went into a down mode. It would not operate at all. Now, so what does that say? Well, number one, I called my electric company. They had to beef up my service, so I had enough to do that, which they did do. But the fact of the matter is that the technology behind the equipment is getting so grandiose that what you have today and the amount of investment you've made today and whatever that is by the equipment design, the materials that are going to go into place, and all over aspect of the repair, it's likely that that piece of equipment is going to be outdated by the following year or slightly thereafter. So,
when we were doing research for our Pro First program, we knew we had to have a certain amount of tools and equipment and so forth. And one of the things we heard over and over again was, you know, are you going to make us buy a particular brand of equipment or whatever? Because I've already got, you know, 3 brands here and they all do the same thing. So we went back to asked them, you know, give us the specifications, don't give us a brand, and they gave us the specs, and that's how we put it out. So if you got a piece of equipment that meets these specs, I don't care whether it's a Lincoln or a Pro Spot or Miller or what it is, you know, if it meets these specifications, you're good to go. And hopefully it won't be out of date before too long. Aaron?
Well, and I think that both these gentlemen have already touched on it. You know, there's absolutely redundancies in the equipment requirements that exist in programs today. I think to Gary's point, Assured Performance tries to do the same thing to bring value and benefit to our program, but working with equipment manufacturers, at least to have a universal set of standards for equipment that are agreed upon for all the manufacturers. But, and I hate to keep saying it over, but I think in the future you will see even in addition to that are going to be specific equipment, not brand. I mean, we are very agnostic to brand, for lack of a better term, but a piece of equipment that may be required for this particular vehicle that has to fit the specification range. I absolutely respect what Gary said. I think it's really important to understand the capability of the equipment, the need that exists there in the vehicle, and if the equipment does have the specifications that meet the need that the vehicle has, then that piece of equipment should be something that's acceptable to use.
Yeah, at ICAR, we believe much more in specifications as per what Gary was relating at Honda, as opposed to a brand. Having said that, ICAR works very close with all of the equipment manufacturers, and we certainly recognize that there, as more materials, lightweight materials especially, are part of the vehicles, and for that going forward, you're going to see a lot more magnesium on vehicles. You're going to see a lot more aluminum. All aluminum is not the same, that's for sure. You're going to see more carbon fiber. We believe in specs, but we do understand, as per what Mr. Wano was saying about some very specific equipment. The OEs, a number of the luxury brands, especially the spend a lot of money on research and development and coming up with the vehicles, and they, especially the Europeans, have a specific type of equipment in mind for repairing this. Yeah. Having said that, I will say that I know a lot of collision owners that had invested heavily in aluminum because they're part of the high-end programs. They were thrilled when Ford came out with aluminum truck because they felt that they might get a return on their investment, or a better return on their investment than they'd had. There is duplication. The OEs certainly have the right and the information to specify the equipment.
I echo what's been said, which is there are some specific requirement by manufacturers, and some of them based on the particular parts that they have on the vehicle. You need to have a particular welder, even though specification is the same, but it's a particular weld that can fit in those areas to perform the task of welds or whatever the case may be, riveting. So that's why there's some specific equipment out there. As a general rule, if there is an opportunity to by specification eliminate some of the redundancy of the parts for training and really looking at this big picture of the ecosystem of someone's got to pay for this. And who would that someone be? I suggest people sitting in this room are the ones who are all insurance, that we're all paying for it. So looking at from that perspective, how do we make this ecosystem to work better for all the constituents so we get the right result?
Well, since we've been talking about a little bit about future, I heard Aaron down there talking about equipment-specific training. Seems to be something that may be on the horizon. What do you think? What else do you think might be on the horizon for as a requirement to have a program?
You know, as a repair, I would say that what we see today seems to be, you know, outside the norm. But as the technology continues on these automobiles, you're talking about Honda, and I'm sure Toyota's in here, and General Motors, and we're looking at Ford's F-150 aluminum truck design. At some point, this isn't going to be outside the norm. What we're talking about right now with the equipment, the training, and all it takes to repair these specific automobiles or this specific technology is going to be on all the cars. So I would see tomorrow bringing more and more of this industry focusing a lot heavier on the necessity of the training and investing just to do today's automobiles, not luxury brands, not the norm size brand from whoever, but the average automobile.
Well, a lot of people think that I get to see all of the new cars and all of the new technology and all this new trick stuff way before anybody else does. That is not true. We certainly don't. However, when you take a look at where we're going with the, was it 56 miles per gallon we got to have in the next 10 years or whatever it is?
54.5.
54.5, close enough. I mean, 10 years from now, we're going to be working on metals and plastics and stuff that aren't even invented today. So all I can say is stay tuned. More to come.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think you will see the need for just more specific training, but what's staggering is exactly, just the technology change, the CAFE standards that have to be met, which the government is not going to lift that. They're going to continue to impose that on manufacturers, I think. Car manufacturers have to continually invent new and better ways to lightweight vehicles. They're going to be looking at every component in the car. So it's a case of you'll see more of it. Right? That's exactly right. It's not going to be a whole lot different, even though some of these substrates will introduce challenges in the repair world. But we've already kind of seen what those challenges are and what's coming, especially with these advanced composites and carbon fibers, which are, a whole new animal. But, that technology is going to continue, and there's just going to be more of it. Like Gary said, the stuff that you see used in these European manufacturers that have been doing it for a decade or longer, it is now becoming mainstream. And so keep your eye on what those European low production unit manufacturers are doing, because it's a lot easier for them to implement the new technology, make the decision to use this new substrate. And the big guys will let them find and forge that, and hey, this works, and then they'll do a mass duplication of that. So it's just going to be more of it. I think you guys are already seeing what's out there and what's coming. And watch other industries just the same. But it's just going to be a much more pervasive and prevalent in our industry.
A number of years ago, I was working for a paint company and working very closely with General Motors, and my GM representative came to me and said, John, we need a repair process, a refinish process for some magnesium parts. And I absolutely did a double take. I said, magnesium, that's so reactive. Why are you putting that on an automobile? And he said, well, I won't go into all the details on that, but I will tell you that there's going to be a lot more of it. A couple weeks ago, I read that Porsche coming out with a vehicle with magnesium top. Magnesium. So So there's going to be more and more of that. And we're all going to have to adapt to it. We're going to have to get used to working with these new materials and being open to the training that we're going to have. One thing that is very positive at ICAR is a number of the vehicle manufacturers are coming to us as they're designing these vehicles and ask us for some input and guidance in terms of repairing them. I believe that the OEs are looking further down the road than they used to and are absolutely in tune with having a cost-effective repair to their vehicles, even when there's exotic materials on there. So they're giving a lot of forethought to that, and we're happy to be a part of that, to be involved in that early on. I was at an international conference. Larson was there a number of years ago, and a design manager from Jaguar Land Rover was there, and he reported that the previous year he had been told that it took like 21 hours to do this repair on a Range Rover. And he was appalled. He went back and they redid some things, and he was able to report 1 year later that it would take 6 hours in the future to do it. So the OEs are being much more proactive and sensitive to design and especially the repair.
I think everyone has said stuff like CAFE and IIHS requirement, rise of total losses, and which is, technicians are coming across seeing things that they're not familiar with it. So it's embarrassing to say, I don't know how to fix this. So you kind of begin to really look at what's alternative. I've seen that many times. So training becomes really, really huge by the manufacturers and also by the ICAR for our industry. And the important thing is here the shops of Gary's shops down there, being so specific is no longer just Gary's location anymore. Toyotas and Hondas and regular mainstream cars, you really need to move up to a latest technology because they're using the same stuff because of the constraint of CAFE and IIHS to be able to do those things. So this thing about, well, I'm not a JLR, but you know what? You're fixing that car just like JLR's requirement was. And so it really boils down to one thing again. At the end of the day, for me, is as an industry, we need to work together. As an insurer, the days that insurer sits in a table with shops and manufacturers begin to create a DRP that it involves all three of them and finding ways to work smarter together and reducing some of the redundancy. And that's what I see is what's needed.
One more point from and I'm sorry, but from the repair aspect, for the repairers that are out listening or being part of this forum, today's a good time to jump into this and have the opportunity of being able to begin developing that level of business model. Because currently, if you begin this process, you begin going down this regimen of training, you've been going down this regimen of investment into the equipment necessary to do the job right, this will prepare you as time goes on. Now you have the opportunity of being able to look at your business, you're able to plug in those new budgetary items that probably were not in our budgets in the past. We thought that we'd buy a welder and that'd be the welder we'd have until doomsday. We have bought a frame machine, same thing. You think frame machine, woo, that's going to be the last frame machine I have to buy for however long. Whatever the scenario might be, that was the mindset then. So today we have that opportunity. So the repairers that are out there today, if you have that opportunity, it's a wonderful time to jump in now, find a program, find whatever it is, get some ideas so you can begin to now massage and build that into your business model at a slower pace than waking up tomorrow and that's the only thing you had to work on, and you are not prepared.
With that, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for participating today.